So Mario already outlined the ending the epidemic structure. The only reason I'm re-showing it here is because when we get to the concept of the research contribution, which is what I'm going to be talking about today to this, it's really important to remember what the 4 buckets that are going to be the focus of funding for research in this initiative. And those are diagnose, which basically means diagnose everyone who is actually HIV infected so that they can be linked to care. Treat, which is the second pillar, which means that everyone who is known to be positive has access and is facilitated and supported in antiviral treatment to virologic suppression. Prevent, meaning anyone who is at risk by any mode of transmission has access to a broad range and a menu and a toolbox of HIV prevention strategies, so they, with their providers, can decide what mechanisms of HIV prevention are right for them, and then access and stay with those prevention strategies. And respond, which is very much what Mario was focusing on in this. We need real-time accelerated information so that new focuses, outbreaks, events that weren't anticipated and aren't currently being targeted can be responded to rapidly in real time. So this is a little bit fuzzy, I apologize, but it's just a reminder to all of us that we really do have an enormous number of tools for both treatment and prevention, and some of those are actually both in our armamentarium, in our toolbox today, right? I mean, the holy grail for prevention is a vaccine, right? That you get one shot or a series of shots and you would never have to worry about any other methods of HIV prevention. But 30+ on years in the epidemic, unfortunately, we're actually still as far away today as we were 30 years ago. We don't have one. Research is ongoing, but we don't have one. And these are tools that we have today. And I think it really is incumbent on all of us to leverage tools we have today while we're waiting for what we hope will be in the future. I'm a very simple guy. So this is my sort of very simple conception that I print out and put over my desk to remember how the government is thinking about this ending the epidemic structure, right? It's being organized by the Secretary of Health and Human Services. And then there's a whole series of treatment and care and service delivery partners, CDC, the HRSA, Indian Health Services, and SAMHSA. And then there's a research component. And the research component is actually a fairly small component of this, and that's the NIH, the second one on the left. And when people sort of wonder what the breakdown of this funding distribution is currently planned, it's shown here. So it's about $290 million that's anticipated, and most of that is going actually for services and surveillance, right? So 140 million planned for the CDC, 120 million to HRSA, 25 million to the Indian Health Services, and then 6 million planned for research. So just to give you an idea about how that money, at least currently, is planning to be divided. And the other thing that I like to print out and put over my desk is a reminder that this is really a whole of society initiative, that everyone needs to be at the table for this to be successful. And my favorite one here is the yellow box. You. Everyone in this room, everyone who cares or is affected by or living with HIV is part of this project. And I think we all need to remember that and come together collaboratively with new innovative ideas, because what is going on currently obviously is not working. So we need new ideas at the table, and we need more of what has been proven to work. So the implementation plan, Mario already mentioned this, and we'll be talking about this, I think, a lot with our partners further today. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, but a reminder that this is targeted at 40 counties, as well as a series of southern states that comprise over 50% of the epidemic, and is going to emphasize early diagnosis, treatment, and engagement, expand PrEP, and rapidly respond to new clusters. Tony Fauci, who's the head of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Disease at the NIH, I think said it best in an editorial he wrote in the Washington Post in 2016, that there really are no excuses. We have the tools to end this epidemic. Where is the political will and where are the financial resources to implement them to reach this goal? And that is sort of the rallying cry of, I think, the Ending the Epidemic initiative. So I'm going to now really focus on the research component, which is what I was asked to talk about today. And what the NIH decided to do was to take those 48 counties and the 7 states that are most affected and really try to figure out what the best mechanism was for rapidly getting pilot data for innovative new ideas in anticipation of a larger amount of funding be available next year to scale up promising projects. Okay, and this falls under the rubric of something called implementation science. It means figuring out what actually works to help scale up these treatments, these interventions, to help support the services that are being scaled up and rolled out through the other agencies. This is a map I think you're all familiar with of the states that are targeted as well as the 48 counties that are being targeted. And what's overlaid in this map are the centers that the NIH decided to leverage for the initial pilot work. Okay, and the name of these centers, there's 2 groups. One are called CFARs, which are Centers for AIDS Research, which are currently funded units at various academic centers around the country that happen to overlap quite nicely with the areas that are being targeted by the whole initiative. And also, there's this other group called P30 centers, which are funded by a different branch of the NIH than Tony Fauci oversees, mostly by the National Institute of Mental Health. And you can see the Centers for AIDS Research are the red ribbons on this map, and the P30 from NIH are the sort of purpley ribbons on this map. So you can see there, while there's still some sort of empty spots that where these centers don't cover areas that are part of the EHE initiative, there's a reasonably good overlap of where these centers are. And the NIH made the decision that these centers are where they're going to open an application system for pilot projects. And when they dropped this application, it was an extremely fast turnaround. When, I'm going to forget exactly, but it was like 6 or 8 weeks or something, 6 weeks. So they said, put in proposals, go, do in 6 weeks. So that was a little bit of a shock to the system. The long story short was we gathered a whole bunch of partners, including great advisors from the CABs that we work with, our partners at DHSP, our partners that we worked with in other projects, representing a broad constituency across the county to come up with, we were allowed to put in 3 proposals. So we put in 3 proposals. California in general did quite well. Overall, there were 65 awards made by the NIH. They went to 13 CFARs and 6 NIMH P30s, and they covered 36 of the 48 counties that were affected. So that's very promising, and 5 of the 7 priority states. 13 awards in California, 3 came to CHIPS, 3 came to the Center for AIDS Prevention Services in San Francisco, 3 to the UCSF CFAR, and 4 to the UCSD CFAR in San Diego. So California did really well. Remember, these are planning grants. These are small grants to do formative work very quickly so that sometime in 2020, when this larger amount of funding becomes available, those groups can apply for those fundings to scale up these pilot projects. So the 3 projects that were funded through CHIPS, I'm going to go through really quickly in my last 5 minutes with you. One is a regional response to HIV eradication across Southern California counties. We're calling it the Regional Coordination Project. And this is really a really close and intense partnership with DHSP, a lot of community partners here in LA, and surrounding counties, which, as far as I've been told, has never been done before. So this is a novel and incredibly important initiative that we hope will accelerate surveillance and identification of outbreaks, and particularly with people becoming forced out of their homes by the cost of housing, the lack of local available housing, and being pushed even out of LA County into surrounding counties. The coordination across these counties becomes ever more important for understanding our epidemic, as it really becomes almost a migratory epidemic. The second one is how to scale up PrEP for most vulnerable populations that are disproportionately affected by HIV using digital technology. And the third is really looking at this treatment pillar of getting ready for these long-acting injectable treatments. So instead of pills every day, there's going to be an opportunity, probably in early 2020, for shots that would be initially once a month to keep people HIV suppressed, and what that can do to help us improve the care cascade, and are we ready for it here in Los Angeles? So briefly, the Regional Coordination Project, the leads are Steve Shoptaw and Wen Cao. We also have a large number of additional partners in DHSP and the PAATC, some of whom are here today, and I just want to mention Tom Donahoe is here, and Sandra Cuevas, also from PAATC, who are partnering with us, and also at the State Office of AIDS, Marissa Ramos and Kevin Sitter are our close partners in this project, as well as a number of community agencies locally and the surrounding counties. This is for the Respond pillar. And again, there are meetings planned to identify the infrastructure, resources, and capacity building needs to support coordination among these counties for surveillance. So we're very excited about that. The planned activities of this pilot grant are to solicit community input, meet with the state and 8 California counties. This happened already on October 24th. Planning stakeholder engagement and gathering perspectives. There's a regional meeting planned for January of 2020 to outline a regional strategy and coordinate next steps. And we're working closely with the State Office of AIDS to identify and allot resources to sustain a regional plan that'll be coordinated across those 5 counties. And then, of course, develop a report to support and sustain the EHE activities in anticipation of this larger application, where hopefully this process will be scaled up and continued when we see what that application looks like. The digital PrEP project is being led by Dr. Delara Uskup, who's here today, and Ron Brooks, also from UCLA. This is the Protect pillar. And again, looking at assessing the feasibility of digital technology delivery systems to promote PrEP uptake, acknowledging that medical mistrust and centers that are conventionally identified as locations where people seek services for HIV prevention and treatment are often not okay for people who are already stigmatized or are concerned that they're going to be stigmatized by seeking those prevention services, and is likely limiting uptake of this very powerful prevention strategy. So I think that's tremendously exciting. Again, gathering community input. There are a series of planned community consultations in February of 2020 that's scheduled, so look out for invitations to that. There'll be breakout sessions for Black and Latino MSM, Black and Latina trans women, Black and Latina cis women, and persons who inject drugs. And the idea is going to be to generate a compendium of practices that will promote deployment of PrEP using these technology-based services. And again, prepare us for what we hope will be a larger opportunity to try out some of these in actually some research settings with the larger grant application that, again, we're hoping is going to come out sometime in 2020. And lastly is this long-acting injectable and a retroviral system that I'm heading along with David Goodman-Meza, also of UCLA, and this is under the treat pillar. And again, this is this idea that there's about to be the first FDA approvals. It's scheduled for, I think, December 26th is the due date for the FDA to make a decision about this, about a monthly injectable treatment that will allow people who are undetectable currently to switch from daily pills to monthly injections. And then sometime soon, it'll be every 2-month injections. It won't be every 1 month anymore. But it will still require that people be virally suppressed before they can use this, just because of the way the medications are designed and constructed. Obviously, that's not optimal for people who've been out of care and have trouble with pills. And we're hoping in the future to have more of these long-acting kind of options that will be more powerful than this current generation of them, and will give more opportunities for leveraging this for people who really have trouble taking daily pills. The advantages, of course, injectables is, it may address the adherence issues due to less frequent scheduling. Some people won't have to carry around pills that could be stigmatizing. There'll be fewer or different side effects. Maybe there'll be less laboratory testing needing, smaller drug doses, and at least in the clinical trials, it was very, very acceptable to people. People loved it. So we're hoping that turns out that outside of a clinical trial setting, that remains true. The downside, right now, we're seeing people every 4 to 6 months. This is going to require seeing people every month. And what is that going to do to our health systems? Do we have capacity to absorb that? Have we even planned for that if that's what this is going to take? Can we farm out some of these services to home nursing? Can partners or family members be trained to administer this to people at home? All questions that we don't know the answer to. The shots are big. They're large volumes, so they have to be given in the buttocks and the gluteal region. And that's not going to be acceptable to some people, and some people hate needles. So this isn't going to be for everyone, but it's certainly a step in the right direction. And we have no idea what it's going to cost. Until there's an FDA approval, the companies that make it will not comment on how they're going to price it. So that is an enormous unknown, and I think we're all terrified that they're going to charge whatever the market will bear because they can. So I think we're all very anxious about that. The planned activities for this is we're having 6 focus groups in January and February, including clinical and non-clinical providers, policy makers and agency partners, and potential consumers of this to hear what people want and people need to see if this is feasible, develop good practice recommendations, and conduct capacity building to support implementation, again, with an idea that in 2020, we might be able to pilot some of these interventions with the medications in hand and see what works best for people in LA County. So in conclusion, thinking back to that yellow octagon in this whole thing, you are part of this. So please join us in these research initiatives. Remember, this is only a small piece of the EHE component, this research component, but your participation in this research is critical. Participate and support in the regional planning meeting for the first project in January. Participate in the PrEP community consultation on February 10th. Come to our focus groups for the long-acting injectables. We're going to be circulating that as soon as we get IRB approval for our materials. And any other suggestions that you have about this or future research, please let us know. We have no idea what the application is going to look like in 2020 for the additional funds. But as soon as that's known by full transparency, we'll share that and solicit broad input from you all. These are our contact infos if you want to get in touch with us or come find us at the end of this meeting. And I just want to end by, again, thanking our CAB members, some of whom are here in the room, Abad Lopez, Felipe Finlay, and Dalia Ferlito, and our DHSP partners, Becca Cohen, Wendy Garland, Sonali Kulkarni, Mario, of course, and others at DHSP, and all of our other partners, including Dami and Nike at CHIPS for making all this possible. Thank you.